Finishers MMA, finishersmma.com, @finishers. That's how you find them on social media. These guys have a show with us every Monday called Now We Go. You can check it out. Zach, JM, Thor, Grace, there's too many to name that come out of that school, and they are killers in the game. They are the biggest MMA jiu-jitsu school in the area, and they are owning the East Coast. You can contact them at 610-438-0746. Ask for Andrew. They are at 3761 Nicholas Street in Easton, PA. They have 2 locations as of now, Bethlehem and Allentown. They are growing into 3, 4, 5, 6. I would say they are taking over, but they already have. Check them out on all of their social media. They are awesome to follow. And if you're looking to get in shape, you're looking to choke people, you're looking to do anything at all to better your life, finishersmma.com. AllValleyRooter.net. That's not how you pronounce it all the time. I just say it that way. All Valley Rooter, Jared LaBarba. He is my plumber. He's the show's plumber. I'm getting him plumbing business all over, and I love that he is getting what he wants. He has 24-hour emergency service. He is certified, insured, and professional. You can follow him at All Valley Rooter. He's on social media, and you can find his information at allvalleyrooter.net. Jared came down over the weekend and he fixed a problem down here. He's super professional. I love him as a person. I love his business. He grew it, and he's doing his own thing. It's allvalleyrooter.net. It's 24-hour professional plumbing services. He can help you out with everything you need. It's 610-762-1656. He's certified, insured, and professional. Do not be afraid to contact him for any of your plumbing needs. Support Jared. Jared supports us. Luke Delmeyer Handmade Custom Knives. I love Luke. It's lukedelmeyer.com. He's a farrier, a bladesmith, and a blacksmith. He has custom knives, and the best part about it is you can take classes to make them. So not only can you take a class to learn how to make knives, at the end of the class, you get that knife. We're working on a project together. He started recently getting into chef knives, so he's starting to make chef knives. He makes hunting knives. He can make any of your needs as far as blacksmithing. That's at Luke Delmeyer on Instagram. That is the best way to follow him. You can see all the stuff that he's posting. He shares, he does raffles, he gives giveaways. Check out all things Luke Delmeyer at lukedelmeyer.com. We've had him on the show before. You can dig down in the library, listen to how he got started and where he's at now. I'm excited to work with Luke. He's a really good friend of the show, and I'm excited to showcase his chef knife that he's making me. Check out all things Luke Delmeyer at lukedelmeyer.com. Farrier, bladesmith, blacksmith. Rips Auto Detail. This guy is the best, hands down, in the area. I've interviewed him. I know his story. He's doing things that others aren't, and I love that he fucks with the show. I love getting the best of the best and having them support and be a part of this. That's what the sponsorship is for. I'm giving you the best people in their profession, and Rips is the best at auto detail. It's at Rips Auto Detail for Instagram. You follow that. He's showing you the different cars he does, and it's at 630 North Nelson Street in Allentown, PA. He offers paint correction, ceramic, SPS coatings, and more. This is appointment only, and it's ripsautodetail@gmail.com. You can call him at 484-553-1366. I tell you, follow him. If you don't know, you want to know more about what he does, follow him on Instagram. Follow Rips Auto Detail, and you can see all the things that Rip does. He's a big part of the show. We have a separate show we do called Road Dogs, and you can check out his past interviews and hear his whole story. I couldn't recommend this guy more for your auto, car, boat, plane. This guy literally has done everything, and he is the best in the area doing this. Rips Auto Detail. All right, cool. Never Again Studio, maybe episode 190. I don't fucking know. Welcome to Never Again Studio. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Matthew Ham, I have to give him credit for this one. He was like, yo, he's like, check this chick out. He's like, she's from fucking Bethlehem and she's doing all this rad art and she drives around on a motorcycle. And I was like, what? And then I went to your Instagram and I was like, yo, this is everything you said she's actually doing. Some people kind of hype people up and then you get into their Instagram. And I was like, no, it looks like she's traveling around. And then I reached out to you. And at that time, I don't even know if you were in the area because I think we discussed that maybe you're like, hey, I'll be back at this time.
Yeah.
And then I knew that this would eventually, we would make it work because when we got on the phone, I was like, oh, she's really cool. A lot of stuff in common. And then like, I also know that like when I have guests like yourself, you have to let it happen because you're somebody who doesn't live in the realm of a schedule. And it's very similar to me where like I kind of have to build my shit around people. So like I knew this would happen. And then when I got to actually meet you, you are one of the most interesting people I've ever met. And I'm so excited to just dig through your brain. We did talk a little bit before this, but like, where did you even get started in being creative? When did you start getting an itch to start building things? Like, where did all of this that I see today come from?
Well, I mean, I guess the first art form that I ever, practiced was sound, music. So then that was, when I was very young. I think I got a piano when I was 5. I think I was 5. I took piano lessons and voice lessons, and I was very into, music. And my parents always tell the story of like I had this little, cassette player, when I was just like 1, right? And I would always ask to put different music on, and I was kind of obsessed with it, and I would play tapes over and over again, and they would get very annoyed, but they would secretly love it that I would like sing all these songs. And so then I, got more into it and started playing piano, and then I started playing guitar when I was like 9. And at the same time, my dad is a builder. He's a timber framer. So when I was younger, he would be tearing apart our house and like putting in lofts and skylights and
that's so cool.
And like building a treehouse in the backyard, which we still have and has gone through like 3 or 4 iterations. Now it's not in a tree, it's on stilts. And I would be there, watching him do this. And he was also, he started the Habitat for Humanity of the Lehigh Valley that time ago. So we were also like doing a lot of building with communities. And, I have this really sweet picture of that someone took at me at a site, like holding a hammer, like trying desperately to like hammer this nail in. So I've been around a lot of creative things. Sound was my first sort of expedition into that creative part of myself. And then as I sort of developed, and I was always uncomfortable with tools and materials. But then I actually pursued sound. Sound was what I went to school for. I went to Berklee College of Music in Boston and studied what was music synthesis, but is now electronic production and design. So I went there to study. I actually went there to, what I thought I wanted to do was make music and sound for video games. And so I went there and I was really invested in that. I was like, doing a lot of field recording and, studying sound design and composition. And I ended up going to Game Developers Conference, and I ended up
Were you gaming at the time, or like what pulled you towards that?
I've been like a huge gamer.
Computer games to start?
Yeah.
Yeah, same here.
It's from like, I played WoW, World of Warcraft for years, and Diablo and Half-Life and all these kinds of games, and since I was young, and so I was very into like creating. I love the idea of being able to create these experiences for people with sound, and video games are a type of world, a type of experience that you create that people explore and learn things from, and that's what I loved about games. And so I got very into it, and was pretty invested. I was making music and sound for some smaller like indie games and things. And, but then I kind of missed the physicality of things. I was tired of sitting at my computer all day and sort of doing all this digital stuff. And I really missed, holding things and using materials. And I kind of was like, felt something was missing when I was doing games. And so I started making physical sound sculptures, out of materials, things that used audio to create an experience. And I used like metal and glass. That was like the two materials I was drawn to. And the reason, one of the main facilitators, because Berkeley is not it's a music school. It's not an art school. Like they don't have a big workshop with all kinds of tools and stuff. So I didn't exactly have open playground to, pick up saws and welders and stuff. But the universe made it possible. I was good story. So I was looking for a birthday gift for a friend of mine, and he loved blue glass, and he really loved candles. So I was like, okay, I need to get my friend some blue glass candle holders. So I just, for like a week, I was trying to find these candle holders, and I was like going to all these stores, traveling to try and find them here and there, antique stores, and I just couldn't find them. So I ended up calling this glass studio in Boston called Diablo Glass School. And I picked up the phone and called, and this Irish guy answers. And he's just like, as soon as I heard his voice, I was like, wow, this guy, we clicked like instantly. Like within 5 seconds, we were joking around with each other. He was like, talking about Star Wars, and I was like giving him shit about like how he was judging it, and like we were like going back and forth. I was like, this guy is like something special. His name was Sean Clark. His name is Sean Clark, and he I went through the story. I was like, I'm looking for these candle holders, and he was like, just come over. We'll see what we have. Probably have something. And I hopped on my bicycle and biked on over to Roxbury Crossing, and I got out, and like as soon as I got there, Sean was pulling this giant, like it must have been like 70 pounds of glass at the end of his just at the end of his hand, and he had an assistant, and they were like, it was such an intense moment. And they were basically, his sculptures are these huge gathers of glass that he pulls into these different sort of organic shapes. And he was making one of them the second I walked in. And as soon as I walked in, he was like, hey, like, pick up a torch, like, torch this thing. We need more fire. And I was like, okay. Like, I never touched glass in my life at that point. And I was like, okay, all right. And then I like fired up the propane torch. And then after that's like, really, really intense, because glass is such an intense material, like so demanding, so time sensitive, like nobody can fuck up. You really got to be on it and there, like nothing else matters. And I just love that intensity. And Sean was also incredibly intense, And after it was over, he was like, we like met each other, and then we sat down and started talking, and I started telling him about these candle holders, and it ended up that he was like, hey, why don't you just make them? And I was like, okay. He was like, yeah, just you make them. Here, this is how you blow glass. And I was like, okay, yeah, like, fuck yeah, let's do this. And then it was history really from there. Basically, that opened up the door for me to be able to explore materials and take really develop sculpture and technique, and and he had like welders and plasma cutters and oxyacetylene torches and glass and furnaces and kilns. Like there was everything there. And then he basically just told me just to keep coming back, and I just came back like every day. I was just there working, helping, assisting, doing classes, just blowing glass, playing, just, and he gave me a studio in the space. And for the entire time I was in Boston, I just, really, and then sort of games just fell to the side. I was like, that's not what I want to do. And simultaneously, I was taking these programming classes at Berkeley, because they in electronic production of design, they do a lot of audio programming and interactive with like Arduinos and Raspberry Pis and stuff and Max MSP. And there are these different programs that you can use to create interactivity. And so I was taking these classes and working at the studio, and I was like, wow, yeah, games that's not the environment or the space that I want to actually, those aren't the types of experiences I want to create. I love them, and I still love games, but I want to create these like physical spaces like that use this ephemeral material of sound and light to create this like combining of worlds, like the physical and the ephemeral, like bringing together material and sonic qualities. And so the studio Diablo enabled me. And Sean, there's different people in our lives who like alter the total trajectory of the river, right? Like we're here flowing down a river. We should try not to swim upriver because we're always going to lose. We just got to keep going with the flow. And sometimes, the river goes another direction, and not always. I think it doesn't happen all the time, but I feel like there are few people in my life who have completely altered the trajectory of my river, and Sean Clark is one of them. And I, to this day, would not be who I am today without his trust, and that he really put me on the track to be the artist I am now, to really be and create what I'm doing.
It's also important to pay attention to the fact that when you're heading towards a destination and a goal, and things come in and they disrupt like that, and you went from wanting to do this video game thing and then getting into it, that it was okay that you switched directions to do something that's like you had you felt the need to want to build. And I think sometimes people ignore those callings and they just think that they're things that are going on. But it's just, in my opinion, it's like a primal human nature desire to do something that you want to do. And when you ignore that builds up, and then you end up being in these zones where you don't really want to be. So like you may be going in one direction, but it's okay that if a person, a moment, or something sends you down another direction, because you're going to come out the other end almost to like a waterfall regardless. So it's okay to go a different path and then still end up at the different result, which is your work and being happy and being able to go through with everything. So it's like when you brought up that, like, you were kind of looking for a new direction, and then you allowed somebody else to kind of show you. Yeah. That's way more powerful than being stubborn and think that you're going to get somewhere by repeating the same thing over and over.
Definitely. Yeah. And, maybe I probably eventually would have found like that path would have led me. I would have eventually come to the place I am now, I feel. But Sean, but also you're right. Some people they see that, oh, look, actually that's better, but I'm already on this track, so I should just stay and keep doing this thing because I've already invested some time. But it's really, I agree, it's like really important to recognize, like, hey, that gives me more energy. And
you also have time, and I learned it through enough people passing in my life, especially like super close people. And, I try and take everything from those moments, and, you have to make something out of them work. And as stupid as silver linings are, I believe that is what important things. So like, I always use the analogy of like, if you have a shoebox and it's filled with too much stuff, and you have the opportunity to dump the shoebox out and then turn the shoebox back over, you get to choose what you can put in that. Yeah. So if you also are in a moment where you can shift a little bit and you can unload a lot of things and then bring the things that you want from the space that you're in, I feel like that's when you can start really almost creating and controlling where your creative freedom comes from.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely feel like I, purged the things that weren't pushing me in the direction that I felt.
It's important to do that, especially if you have, like life work goals, or like, we talked about like where you want to go. You can't do that by living or acting in a normal fashion. Right. You have to make sacrifices. You have to move things. You have to be open. Like a big lesson that I've learned recently is like, I have to be more open to letting go of the locked in creative idea. Yeah. And then when you do that, you end up realizing that you have way more freedom in the creative spot than being stuck with like, no, that's how it's supposed to be. Yeah. And when you're creating and when you get to do something cool, whether it's with an artist or anything at all, it's never really 100% how you wanted it. So if you're open to it kind of moving and shaping, you're almost creating art in the sense of your life by just kind of channeling down that. And then like I saw how emotionally you're still attached to that moment, and those are changes, and people don't usually change. So it's awesome.
Oh, like the moment that I walked in.
Yeah, like
oh
I can see it in your face.
Yeah, it's like I remember it just like
look at
yesterday.
that smile.
Yeah, it really is. It's one of those times where it's like
It changed your life.
Yeah, I just remember. Remember the smell. I remember what everything that was going on, and yeah, it's a very precious moment. That was a very formative day, and yeah, it's pretty one I'll never forget. And
now, with having shifted into this new lane, and you are now kind of combining the music with creating, when did it actually come together? Because now you're learning an art form on top of your previous art form, and you're free flowing and you're doing all this stuff. But when did it really come together where you did have physical art, sound, and light and everything all in one?
I mean, it happened pretty much right away. Like as soon as I got to, have available to me these materials, I was, blowing glass and making these vessels and making, fusing different types of glass together. And I especially really liked blowing glass and then having it, because when you blow glass, you have to anneal it, which means you have to put it in a kiln or it will explode and break into a million pieces. And I really liked the shattering effect of the glass. So I would blow these really big spheres, and I would assemble them into these like landscapes of glass, because I really loved the sonic quality of. I mean, glass is incredibly driven. I mean, has so many sonic qualities. You can run sound through it. You can fill it with liquid, and then it can be like this vibration chamber. So, when I had access to these things, I started making vessels and fusing materials together and then running sound through them. Like I would take surface transducers and I would make these panels and like spheres of glass, and I would run sound through them to create sound sculptures. And at the same time, I was like building metal, fixtures for them, and how to display them in different ways and hang them from different things. And so it really was right away. I just felt like this whole world opened up, and I was like, oh, like I could hook up some Arduino to that, and I could make it so that the lights go like in sync with the sound, and then I could fill it with water, and I could see like the vibration of the liquids inside of it, and I could visualize audio through these different mediums. And then I could like make it interactive and have like touch sensors where you touch it and like it vibrates more, and like all of the things I was learning in school, I applied directly to the material processes that I was learning. And I was like, oh, like, there was just not enough time to do all the things I wanted to do. But there's never really, I mean, time is always something that and I know you have, when is there enough time?
Yeah.
And, but it was still, all the time that I did spend was incredibly valuable. And it was just right away. And, there wasn't too much lag of like, well, what do I do? It was like, oh my God.
I can work. I
can do all of these things, This is like, oh, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. It was kind of like that, like, oh, but I'm never going to run out of stuff to do. Like, this is there's only iteration after iteration after iteration of things to do. Dumping out of the shoebox and filling it is like every time I sit at my desk to make art, and it's like, okay, what's the next iteration? What do I take out and put in my box? I like that analogy, and I think it was very true. There was a lot of dumping of the shoebox when still, but then I was like, learning so many new techniques. That reevaluation has to happen even quicker.
Where did you move forward after your time there? I mean, did you finish your schooling out?
I did.
And then, what was your next step kind of in your career and life path at that moment?
Well, this is where motorcycles comes in.
Yeah.
So I was making a bunch of work. I'd exhibited work at MIT. I did a couple installations there. I did things at Heinz Convention Center, at different conferences. I did a huge public installation on Boylston Street, which was one of probably the most formative. It was the first project of my life. It was called Things Over Time, and it's a really important project because, as an artist, as a creative person, you sort of like, wander from here to there, and it's good to wander. It's always good. No one should ever stop wandering, but
I pay attention to wandering now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like wandering, but also with a trajectory is something that it's really important for artists, I believe. And I was doing a lot of wandering, a lot of experimenting, a lot of iterations, and until that exhibition, Things Over Time, I really started dialing in exactly what it is I want to make, and what kinds of things and what kinds of conversations I want to have with myself when I create this work. What's the point? What am I trying to work through? And Things Over Time was like if there was a map, it was I'm putting a stake in it. There's a starting point. There's something there. There was some kind of monument. If there's different if you put a flag up, let's say if it was a map. I like thinking about maps. I'm really into maps. So if I was to think about my life as a map, that would have been a major point on it. And it's because it was called Things Over Time, but it's to be read as a mathematical equation. Things divided by time. And the whole project was about how we care about our stuff, how we care about ourselves, how we care about our things, how we care what we care about and what we don't care about, how things change over time, the measurement of entropy, this idea of what values we put on time and how that influences what matters to us. And the project was a sound chamber of glass that I put on Boylston Street. It was in one of those pods, that people store stuff in. And I found the pods very interesting because people either put the most important things in there and ship it across the country, or they put it in their backyard and put shit they hate that they need to get rid of, right?
What a very interesting way to look at pods. So, it's the truth.
It is true. I see people's yards.
It's probably the most black and white thing ever.
Right. It's no one gets them unless they care a lot and they're moving and they put their most valuable stuff in, or they put it in their backyard and forget about it. And so I liked the idea of these pods because it created this question of what matters and where do we put the stuff that matters. And it was driven by, I'm very into abandoned historic places, and I'm just generally things that are decayed. So the first subway tunnels ever built in the United States were not in New York. They were in Boston. Under the Tremont Street station in Boston is the first subway ever built in the United States, and no one knows about it. The Tremont station has there is no memory of it. People don't even know it exists. It's just forgotten, right?
And it's still there.
It's still there, and it's a very important part of our history, and nobody knew about it. And so I kind of got obsessed with that. Why? People need to understand this part of Boston's history and our history, and why it's forgotten, and why it matters, and it's been there for so long. And so Things Over Time, what I wanted to do is I wanted to displace displace the audio from the Tremont station into this pod. And so I went down with a crew. It took I really like things that take a lot of time and are very difficult. And so this was a very difficult thing because I had to get a permission from the city, from the MBTA. I had to get $1 million of insurance. I had to bring $20,000 worth of recording equipment down into these dank ass, danky little moldy water-filled
The places
tunnels.
you would never want to bring audio equipment.
Yeah. and like but I got permission and
Yeah.
and it worked out, and I went down there with a crew for 6 hours, and we did like a surround sound recording of the space, and I took it into this pod that I filled with these broken, shattered pieces of glass, and played the audio from the Tremont tunnels into the glass, and it became this vibrating chamber of glass that people could walk into and hear the tunnels, even though they can't see them or be close to them. So getting back to your point, that was a very formative piece. And after that, like, I always knew that, the decision was made that I wanted to do this with my life. And then that project happened, and it was a major success. And I was like, all right, big art, sound, light, glass. Like, this is what I want to do. And so then came to my end of time at school, and I was like, all right, Burning Man, that has big art. I was like, how I need to do more of that. So where do you go?
I love the leveling up. I love the self-leveling up. Like, let's go. Let's go.
Come on.
Bigger, better. Yeah, that's how I am, man.
Yeah, it's
and
like,
I had I always repeat this. I had somebody tell me once, like, they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm moving the studio. I'm doing all this shit. And they're like, dude, that's a huge goal. And I'm like, if I set my goal all the way out here and I come halfway, I am further than what I would have been accepting how things are now.
Definitely.
And I love the energy where you're like, let's go, like Burning Man, bigger.
Exactly.
Yeah, no walls. Why put a lid on things?
No, I know.
Why do it? Why do it?
Yeah, and I mean, if you want to build,
The best things come from no boundaries.
yeah, and for me at that time, it's like, all right, you want to build big art? Well, go to the place where some of the biggest art in the world is being built.
Have you ever been? Were you there previous to wanting to do this? Like, were you? So you never even had a Burning Man experience?
No, I had always wanted to go, but
what a cool way to make it your experience by creating there,
Yeah.
not as, you know what I mean? That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, now I just won't go unless I'm, like, I won't go to Burning Man unless I'm actually making something.
Yeah.
Because, like, it would be like, like, it's the biggest platform for big art. Like, if I went there and didn't make something, knowing what I want to do with my life, I would just be like sad the whole time. Like, I'm here, like, but I didn't contribute to this. Like, why, what's the point? So anyway, I made that goal, and I was like, all right, Burning Man, gotta go. And I got involved with a project with a couple other people, and it was actually an honorarium project, so it was on it's actually at 9:00 on the playa, so it was a pretty prominent location, but I was like, all right, but like, I don't want to. Well, I had actually gone and lived in Berlin for a little bit, because I was like, all right, I'm going to go to Burning Man, and I think I want to go and live in Berlin, because they're doing a lot of really creative and interesting art there. And I went there. This was before I graduated. I was like pretty into the idea, but I was like, I got to check it out. So I went to this festival and really like saw what it was like. And I was like, yeah, it's bomb. Berlin's awesome. Totally could go here.
And I want to back up just for a second, because it was one thing that I was so intrigued by why travel is so easy for you, is that you grew up moving around a lot, correct?
Yeah.
So like, because I'm always like, how is she just going like, because for a normal person, just be like, I'm going to go do that. Like, there's a lot of buildup, even with me, because I know I'm going to travel, but I still have buildup, even like going to Vegas, like where I'm like it's a thing for me. But like, you grew up almost traveling the world at a very young age, so your idea of travel isn't even traveling. You're going to a destination because you're already used to living in atmospheres that most people wouldn't even consider.
Yeah, I think I have I don't really think of it like travel. I just think of it as it's just like my lifestyle.
Yeah,
moving around. It's not like I'm gonna go traveling. It's like I am gonna go there and continue living my life.
But what an interesting way to have lived, where it breaks you free from that. If you want to pick up and go to Berlin, that that is real because you've lived in other countries.
Yeah.
Where like, if you don't have that, my way to look at it is like, there'd be so much to do where you're like, well, I already know what to do, so why don't I just move from point A to point B? Which is why I like that you said you enjoy maps, because how you probably look at things is just you're going places. You're not traveling. It's not vacation. Like, you're just having moments on different parts of your map.
Exactly, yeah. And when I went to Berlin, I like didn't even know where I was staying. I didn't know what was going on. Like I just went there and I was like, it's gonna work out, and it ended up really working out.
Yeah.
I ended up staying with two different couch surfers, and one of them just gave me his apartment for like a long time, and I just stayed there, and he was like gone. He had just like had this apartment for free, just living a life in Berlin and trying it out. It just like worked out. And, yeah, I mean, the first time I was on a plane was like when I was like 3 months old or something. And when my family went to Costa Rica, and then, we stayed in all kinds of places, Costa Rica, Guatemala, Pakistan, England, like moving around. So yeah, it's really not travel. It's just like my lifestyle.
Yeah.
And that's just, different. So anyway, so I had initially thought, okay, I'm gonna go to Burning Man, and then I'm gonna move to Berlin. But I was like, I don't just want to jump into work and doing all this stuff. I need to like have an adventure. I need to go and do something. And I was like, I want to see my country. I want to see America, because America's an amazing country. Well, I mean, God, the amount of national forests and parks we have in this country, and free camping is like the best in the world. It's incredible how much we have here, and how vast and different the territory is. So I was like, all right, how can I make an adventure? How can I make an adventure? Even though like Burning Man was already an adventure, I was like, all right, come on.
So you had done Burning Man by this point?
No, this was before I left Boston.
Okay,
so I had sold everything in my apartment. I had one backpack with stuff. I had sold everything that I could, and was like, okay, I'm going to Burning Man, gonna bring one backpack, don't want any of this shit. So I sold it all, and I was like, all right, now I have to now there's some sort of adventure that's gonna happen. And first I was like, I'm gonna train hop my way across back to the East Coast, and then go to Berlin. And so one thing you gotta know about my parents is they never, like they've said no in my life. Like, no, you can't like go, disappear for a week. Like, oh, you can't go to that friend's house this night or whatever. They have said no, but they never said no to the important shit. Like whatever it was I wanted to do, whether I wanted to be a welder, or whether I wanted to take piano lessons, or whether I wanted to try like take MMA classes, or whatever, all of these different things. They were never like, no, that's a terrible idea. They were always just like, oh, cool, interesting, how can we help you make it more? And
it's huge.
Yeah, that love that they have, and that openness. They're just some parents can be really threatened by their kids, and that really holds people back, and makes them insecure. And my parents are just not like that. They've just always been like, go, do it, bigger, just whatever you need. Well, we're here, support you. What do you think about this? Let's try and like add this to it and whatever. And so when I told them about the train hopping idea, it was there's not many times they've actually said no to big ideas. And they were like, Chelsea, that's not a good idea. And I was like, what? And I was like, all right, they said it's not a good idea. That maybe I should listen to it. And so I was like, oh, I got to do something. And they're like, just think of something better. Just think of something better. And I was like, well, I've always wanted to ride a motorcycle. And so I was like, okay, I want to ride a motorcycle across the country. And they were like, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
And then, so the weekend before, I totally packed up my apartment. And I signed up for a weekend crash course, no pun intended, and I did not crash, like get your motorcycle license in 3 days. And I signed up. My dad was actually there because it was my graduation ceremony. So they were there. So they were able to drive me like hours away for this motorcycle class for 3 days. And I got my license. And this was like, I had 7 hours of driving experience by the end of the class, but I went and got my license, and now I had my license. And I was like, all right, got my security deposit, and my bags packed. Literally the next weekend after I got that, the license, I flew to Reno, built the installation, was at Burning Man for weeks because of breakdown and setup. And then I hitched a ride to San Francisco, had my security deposit, and I went and bought the first bike that I saw. I was just like, gotta get a bike now. Like,
did you research them?
a little, but really I just was like, I have this amount of money. Like
Yeah.
I had like $1,200.
Where are we starting?
And I was like, where is it? Like enter. And then there was a bike. It came up. It was a 93 Yamaha Virago, a 535. And I was like, oh, that looks okay. That seems like it would work. And I went, and the guy had like some bags already, and he was really nice. And I was like, oh, this is great. And I took someone who like sort of knew a little bit, and he's like, yeah, the forks are fucked. Like you got to do this. Like you need to put the new seals on. Like there's the triple clamp is like not really right. You probably have to do some alignment and get this and this. So he gave me all these lists, and I was like, oh, that seems okay. I want to learn how to fix them. So it's perfect. Guy's kind of fucked up, but I can fix it. It's fine. It's like starting to fix it. That's great. I'll just jump right in. So I bought it and like, it was like, 7 hours of driving experience. And then I rode this like crappy sort of kind of broken Virago back to San Francisco and drove it to a place called Piston and Chain. And a good friend of mine, Cody Daniel, was he's a mechanic, and he was like a good friend. And actually at the time he was a stranger. Now he's a good friend. But I was like, dude, I need to fix this bike, and I want to like learn how to do all this stuff. And he was like, come to Piston and Chain. And so I brought the bike to Piston and Chain. This is like a community motorcycle shop in downtown San Francisco. Rest in peace. It's gone now. But so I ended up taking it there and like ripping it apart, like took the whole front of the bike off, like, and fixed it. And then I got on it, and I didn't have any money. So I got a job as a courier delivering food for like 3 weeks for Postmates and this company called Order Ahead. And I learned basically how to ride a motorcycle in those couple weeks.
I was going to ask you, did you use the bike to do the deliveries?
I did.
Yeah.
So I would just like do these deliveries like while learning how to ride a motorcycle. And then in those weeks I got like $500 saved or something. And I used that. And then after I had that, I was like, well, this should be enough. Go across the country. Seems good. And then I left. And I went for like, what was it? It was like the whole summer. I left and rode through, how many states was it the first time? I've gone through 43 of the 50 states, but that time I think it was probably like half. So, and I camped the entire way, never paid for lodging a single night. I cooked all my food on the fire. I changed my tire once, my rear tire in Vegas. I changed it, and I didn't need any more money. I actually made it with $500, and learned so much. It was like incredible. I'm like, honestly, as soon as I got on that bike, I was like, I'm not going to Berlin. I was like, no way. I just want to live on this bike. I was like, I don't want to deal with going and living there. Like, I just want to ride this motorcycle for the rest of my life. And then I was like, all right. I got back after going across, and I was like, I literally, the day I got done with that trip and I arrived on the East Coast, I took a map out, and I was like, all right. And I drew a map all around the world. I was like, this is what I'm going to do with my life. This is what I want to do. I want to build art, and I want to travel on a bike. And I still have the original paper where I was like, I want to go through this country, and this country, and this country, Well,
that's what I was going to ask you, is that now when you're out on the road, and it kind of seems like it's a new transition and there's things going on, is, were you figuring out how to use your art and your sound and incorporate that in with the travel while you were on that trip, and being like, yo, I could take this and I could do that, and then like, and just had a pretty free, open experience, because you have so much time to think when you're unplugged and you're just kind of like out doing that. It's something that I really want to do, and I don't even care if I just do it driving a couple hours and sleeping in the van at a national park, but it's like, it seems to be a very freeing, it's why I enjoy hiking, it's why I like enjoy even doing it alone, which is dangerous. But like I sometimes like just going on the Appalachian Trail and just having those miles to myself. And it's a lot of where creative thoughts are made. And when I was in early on learning how to create, I used to run 8 miles a day, and I didn't realize that in that space is where I was actually doing my best creative thought. It was the most freeing I was, because I was moving, but at the same time my brain wasn't moving with my body. I was daydreaming.
Right.
And then it's like you have that time to just build, create. It's like when people are in cars and they drive. And I remember being a kid and I would look out the window and I always pictured a motorcycle going, and then that would take away from my time of the actual travel. And then I think that's where that came from, where a subconscious, where like I did it later in life, and I'm like, well, here's this area that you had created as a child, and now you can kind of hang out here.
Yeah.
So for you to be going on this completely freeing destination where you built your own bike and you only got $500, and then you simplify your life to these bare essentials, and then you're kind of one with yourself. Where did that start coming in, where you're like, I need to do this and the thing that I love 100%, we're going to put these guys together? Because at that point, there's no way of you thinking you can't do that, because you've already done that transition 3 times, which is why I keep going back to saying for people listening to pay attention, is that these are all moments of when she had changed. But when she changes, she brings these things with her that she loved about the first part, let the other stuff go. Now there's change, and then now you're bringing change on top of change and creating a new life. So like, where did that come across? Do you have the moments of where like you were out in the desert or like riding and you're like, oh, I could be going to do this and creating art in different countries and different states? And
I mean, it was both a sort of a puzzle, and it was, exciting, because while I was traveling that time, I carried a field recorder with me. So I was like doing what I was calling sound diaries. While I was traveling, like capturing spaces, and like sort of kind of like how I displaced the Tremont tunnels above ground for that project. I was capturing these moments in these spaces that I was experiencing to let other people experience them, to use them in my artwork later, to make music out of them. So I was like, that was the first like, all right, I'm traveling, but I love making and creating art. Like I can't choose. I can't choose one or the other. Like there is no me with just motorcycles, and there is no me with just art. They have to like exploring and creation like go together. There's like I just have to synchronize them. That was like the word I use and have always used, like the synchronization of art, travel, and exchange. That's the kind of like what my project is built on. And when I was traveling that first time, the only thing that at that time, I was like, all right, I need to keep creating. A field recorder's portable. I can do that. Like I can use that as a starting place for how to continue being creative while moving. And then, like you said, that place that you get in, that daydreaming, that imaginative space that you get into when you are free and feel free and have literally an empty road in front of you, and you think, and I sit on my bike and I think about how can I do it? Like I have equipment and like materials, and there's like so many obstacles, and a lot of people may be like, oh God, it's just too difficult. Like I have to choose. I have to either be a studio artist or I have to be a traveler. And I was just like, no, I can't. That is not acceptable. They need to put them together. They need to be together. And and so that trip was that sort of the first gears turning with that. And when I got back to the East Coast and drew my map, I was like, all right, that's what I need to do. I need to save some money, because I have really big dreams and very big goals, but I'm also very logical. Like I'm like, maybe some people would have been like, all right, let's go. Let's just head south. But I was like, no, like in order for me to do this, to do this synchronization, for me to be happy, to live the life I want to live, I got to figure out how to both create and explore. And like, I can't do that by just like fucking off and just disappearing without any plan. I was like, I need to make money. I need to get some more skills. I need to figure out how I can be creative on the road. Like, I need to get some things in place. I need to get the right bike. I want to learn all about the bike. Like, I need to get these other things, because it's not like I'm going to go on a trip. Like, I was like, this isn't a trip.
You're fine.
This is an odyssey. That's what I was calling it. And I still call it. It's like, it's just like when you mention, like, I don't see it as travel. It's a lifestyle. It's like, maybe if I thought about it as a trip, I would have been like, all right, let's go and hit the road right after I drew the map and be like, figure it out on the way. And there is something to figuring out on the way, but there's also like, no, it's not a trip. This has to be sustainable. I have to be able to support the things that I love. And it's a step into another form of my life. It's not just this impulsive thing that I want to do.
And I think it's important also to bring up that when you get to points where now you're thinking and acting this way, it's because of things that had happened up until this point. Like, I'm very similar, where like when I started working on things, I would just put my head down and go and use momentum, use destination, and like what you're saying, fuck it, get on the bike. Yeah. But it's like after you do things like that, you realize that that's not really the smartest way to work. And now that you know that that's not the smartest way to work, like I remember a couple of years ago where I was like, all right, cool. Like I can tell you I'm going to get to point B and I'm going to put my head down, I'm going to go through a wall. But then I realized that once I'm on the other side, you got to clean the wall up.
Yeah.
And then you got to patch it behind you.
Right.
And that takes a year.
Yeah.
And I can do it faster and stronger than anyone else, but I don't want to work that way anymore. Right. So it was very, I picked up on that when you were like, yeah, like there needs to be a way to do it, and you have to have a plan. And when you make when you make things, your life work, and you're going towards them, and even if you don't know where you're essentially going, it's better to have an organized plan and plan it out, and then like see where you can be creatively free. Because if you go too far out, or you go in a way, that's where you get lost, and then you start having to deal with depression and things, and there's not, so you need controlled space, but you also need that space to be completely controlled where there's no limits. And doing that is by having a very wide structure. So like it's very important to see that, like on this trip, because we're just like telling a story, and anybody listening, I'm like picturing it like it's Indiana Jones and there's a map. There's like real life in there. You know what I mean? It's easy to sit here and tell the story,
definitely.
But there's real life, and real life is the shit that nobody wants to deal with. They don't want to put it past. But if you listen to what you're talking about, you can be free of those things that you don't enjoy in real life by pursuing the things that you love. And it's my favorite part about listening to you, because when you tell these moments and these things where they're the destinations on the map, your face glows because you're happy that you got there. But that just means that there was a lot of weight that you cut the fuck out before you got here, which is why that emotion is so strong, because they're very pivotal moments in your life. So for you to be like, I need a plan this time, I know that there had to be a lot of shit that you did without a plan to understand that you need a plan. Yeah. So it's like, it's cool having you admittedly openly talk, because some people have too much of an ego and they're like, this is what I did, where you're like, no, here's the blueprint if you actually pay attention to being creatively free. It takes a lot of sacrifice, takes a lot of planning. Sacrifice. It takes tons of failure, it takes a lot of introspection and iterations of your own personality and your own behaviors and patterns, and it's solo change as well. And which we talked about earlier is, that's some real life shit. It was. So I knew I wasn't just gonna like fuck off and crash and burn and then like, have an adventure, a trip, but not really establish this new thing that I want to do with my life. So I was back on the East Coast, and it was winter at that point by the time I got back. And so I was like, all right, let's get out of here. It's cold. And I had no money. Right. So I was like, all right, I need to make some money. So I got a job as doing fabrication, and I also like that when you go back to getting a job and doing things, it's in your skill set, which means that the work is still something that you love doing, whether it's being a courier on the motorcycle that you're in love with, or creating because that's something that you did as a child. So fabricating, regardless as it's somebody saying like, hey, I need you to fabricate this, and it's not you fabricating from nothing, you're still fabricating, which makes it seem less of work and it's more of a passion project to get money to keep going. I mean, my fabrication informs and propels my art, because like I feel
I can sit there and build railings and boxes and staircases and structures for money, but it also, informs and teaches me skills that are applicable to things I want to build of my own. So the fabrication is so integrated, and I do love it. It's fun. So I ended up working a fab job here in the area. And then after summer was over, I was like, oh my God, I need to get out of here. I need to, okay, like I'm saving money. I get it. I need to get a new bike. I need to really get this plan going. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to go to Burning Man again because I need to get off of this coast, and I'll, get a bike on the West Coast and I'll ride south. That was like, all right, go to Burning Man again, make some more money, get a new bike, head south. And because at this point I had done a lot of research, I've worked on my bike more. And so I rode my bike again across the country and take a northern route this time, not a southern, and rode over. And then I ended up staying in San Francisco and building these giant metal trees for the temple at Burning Man. And that was awesome. And then went to Burning Man again and had that whole experience. And then I came back to San Francisco. I was like about to buy a new...
Is Burning Man a reset when you do it? Do you consider it that?
It's like a propulsion. It propels me. So, it's very inspiring. It's, it connects me with a lot of people who like and have similar passions. So, and it's like a home, it's like a home to go back to. So I felt called to go back. So that's sort of why I went. And there was a project for me to do. So that was nice. But after Burning Man, I came back and did some work, and I was like just get ready to buy my bike and sort of fix that up and get going. And I got hit by a taxi, and I broke my back.
Ooh.
Yeah. So that was a bump in the road.
Were you on a bike when you got hit, or were you standing?
I was on the bike.
Yeah.
And it was totally not my fault. Like the taxi hit me from the back, and it sucked. It was totally disruptive. Actually, it meant that I had to stay in the Bay Area, and I had to put basically all the money that I had saved into getting physical therapy, getting the right treatments. And the taxi company, they were arguing that they didn't even hit me, that I just fell over on my bike. And it was a lawsuit, and it became this 3-year lawsuit that I had to deal with, and cooperation with me putting my body back together. And it was like torturous in many ways, not only because of the physical, struggle, but also because it was so like mentally tormenting to have this lawsuit where this company was telling me that something major didn't happen in that they weren't even taking responsibility, and they had enough lawyers that it was looking like I might lose a case where someone hit me from the back.
It's crazy.
I was
with
just
that stuff.
I know. And as the years went by, and I ended up picking up a job as a fabricator at a large scale art production company called Gizmo Art Production, and that was an amazing job. I was able to work and do all kinds of huge large scale artworks. Like I built a ton of pieces that were shipped all over the United States, and everything from multimedia projection mapping, light installations to giant 20-foot high sculptures, all kinds of crazy stuff. But at the same time, I was sort of struggling with this lawsuit. And it was very I would have them say, oh, it's, she's blaming it on this and this. And and I'm just like, dude, could you please just take responsibility?
Yeah, they drag that out. They drain it out. It's I saw my my mom go through that. She fell at Walmart, and she just wanted them to pay the medical bills, and then they were like, nah, you just like fell over your shoe.
Yeah.
And then my parents don't sue people, and they're just like, okay. And then they got a lawyer, and then like I remember my mom was like crying at the table, and she's like, I want this to be over. I don't even care about the money anymore. Like the money comes and goes. She's just like, this has been a thorn in my side, but that's what they do. They want to drag it out. They want to make it a mental battle. And then, you know, an emotional person who's creating and like yourself, it's like, you know, then you start taking that personally, and then you're taking your creative energy and dumping it into like shit that you don't normally do. We're like being upset, and then it just disrupts mood levels, and then you can't get back to what you want to do, and you got a broken fucking back.
I know.
People suck.
I know. It's like, you know, you start doubting yourself.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
Did I fall?
Did I fall? Like, you know, like, no.
Wait a minute,
And
no.
it's like, no, stop thinking that. I know. And so finally, and during this time, I was able, like, I did make a full recovery. I bought a new bike. I bought a Suzuki DR650, which was the bike that I wanted to travel around the world with. And I ended up going on tons of trips. I tore apart my DR, rebuilt basically every part of it. Like, I learned everything about how to fix bikes.
That's awesome.
And it was like, and I learned a ton of new skills because I worked at this fabrication company. So at the end of the day, those years that I spent there were incredibly well spent. I learned so many things about myself creatively, like, you know, with skills and with my motorcycle and just all the stuff. And eventually my lawyer subpoenaed the taxi company's records and found a like deleted footage of the guy hitting me.
Oof.
And as soon as he got the footage, it was over. They paid all my expenses. And then my lawyer was like, well, we could.
They're like, okay, maybe you did get hit. Like, what the fuck, man?
I know. And after.
And they probably spent, in that 3 years, I guarantee they spent more money on lawyers than would have been to just pay your medical bills.
It was outrageous, man. And at that point, my lawyer was like, well, we could pursue, you know, because they were withholding evidence. And I was like, I just like your mom. I don't want to deal with this anymore. Just get it out of my life. I don't want to be in this country. I want to leave. And this lawsuit and these trials have been keeping me away from leaving. Like, I physically have to go to these doctors so that they don't think that I'm like lying.
Yeah.
You know, like I have to have consistent record of healthcare. And I was like, no more pursuing. I don't care about the money. Just pay the medical bills, get this out of my life. And as soon as it was over, literally like 2 months after it was over, I was on my bike riding south. Like, it was just, okay, that's done. Now,
later.
Bye. So, and then I left and went south and crossed the border into Mexico and started my map, I guess.
How did that go?
Good. It was incredible. It was like, you know, better than I could have ever imagined. And, you know, COVID has sort of disrupted that a little bit, but you know, I had to come back. Now my bike is stuck in Guatemala.
How long were you out before you had to come back?
3 years.
It's crazy.
Was it 3? 2.5? Something like that. Yeah. Because I was.
Do you feel in those 2 years that was what everything was building up to be, where you could travel and you're using the bike, and then you're also using art and creating? And I mean, that's such a long time to be away, but I mean, you really weren't away because where you were going was your life, so you probably didn't look at it as being away.
No.
So like, what did that feel like to be creating everything from the story so far up into now, but now doing it in a mobile fashion and being able to see the world?
It is, because I am going back at the end of the year to my bike.
Yeah, I mean, I even said to you, I was like, yeah, like I just want to get this done. And I said, because I know you're not going to be here long.
Yeah.
Like, this is the type of person you are. Like, it's very special for me to even be able to do this interview, because in your life and the time that you have, it's like you may come back and forth, but to be able to get you now, I knew that was my opportunity, because when we had spoke, you were like, hey, I don't know when I'm coming back. Right. And I was like, okay, this is gonna be a hard one to land. Yeah. But then when you were here,
yes,
I was like, all right, cool. But that's also amazing to me, because there's so much I'm going through, and then to be able to talk to you, and then this is going to give me so much energy to get out of what I'm in, because I'm listening and talking to somebody that's pursuing what I want, and it's just in a different fashion.
Sure.
But to be able to grab you in this moment means a lot to me. So it's cool to capture.
Yeah.
And I feel like I know what I'm doing now with this art form, if that's, I would kind of look at it as that now.
That's definitely
so
what it
to be able to tell this story and have the listeners watching like this is Laura Croft in a movie, it's cool. So like, I appreciate the fact that you even gave me a sliver of your time.
Oh,
but
I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy that you asked. Honestly, it's been such a fucked up year. I mean, I shouldn't use that. I shouldn't refer to it like that. There's been a lot of really great things that have actually come because COVID pulled me away from my life. It's been a very challenging year.
yeah.
And sometimes, like I was in I finished one of the biggest art projects I ever made in my entire life in Guatemala in January 2020, right? Like I built this giant concrete, glass, and steel temescal on the side of a mountain looking at an erupting volcano. Like it's the most epic thing I've ever made in my life.
And I want to get back to that. I'm going to let you finish your thought, but I do want to get back to where the creating started.
Sure. But, this year, has been, I came back with thinking, I came back not even because of COVID. I came back because I was offered a welding gig in San Francisco. It was like an incredible deal. It was like, have an apartment, pay for your food. You just be our dedicated welder and we'll pay you like good money. I was like, hell yeah, I'll do that.
You're like, maybe
flight.
I'll take a break riding this motorcycle around. Get into a bed.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was like, came back just with my simple little backpack and thinking I was going to just be gone a month. And then 2 weeks into the gig, the borders closed and then I couldn't return back to my bike. And since then I've gone through like huge waves of like terrible depression and like not understanding like what my life is anymore, if I can go back or how I can get things together, or like how to approach my art as just a studio artist. I have a hard time staying in one place sometimes. And it's so nice to be here talking to you. And I appreciate you inviting me because it is a nice reminder of like remembering the story that has come before me and what my story, parts of what I hope the story to be in the future. And it's nice to talk to someone who also has like big goals and
it's refreshing.
And, and to,
it gives you hope.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes when you try and talk to people about what you're doing, especially people who have been there from the beginning, they kind of look at you like, yeah, man, like, they just kind of see I'm living in my head and like living in where we're going in the moment. And then when we get there, it's like, all right, cool. I kind of usually hang out for a little bit, but then I get bored. And like, even now when you came down here, I am gutting this place. And like, I'm just done with it. And everybody loves it and everybody thinks it's really cool. But to me, it's like, I want to do it again.
Yeah.
Like this is, this was 4 years of creating a studio and it's exactly what I wanted in my head. And there's so many feels. And when people walk in, it's a punch in the face, which is what I wanted. And then like, now it's like, I'm doing something different. And then I was like, well, what if I kind of create a totally different way? And we don't have such a loud vibe and we keep that vibe for something that's more personal. And then like, I want to create again. And then the older I get, the more I understand is that I have to create. And that's why I forced myself to do this for a living. It's why I love new art, like, you know what I mean? Like, I can't draw. I can't. So like how I create is like, I need these physical spaces and I need to put colors on the walls that change my depression. And then when you start realizing that like your life becomes your meter of your mood, and then when people disrupt it with just stupid things in their life or taking energy from you or telling you can't do something, I totally understand why you would be depressed because, I try and tell people like when I want to control my mood, I go up too high, and then I know that the coming down is going to be slow. So like if I go up real high and I'm coming down, and then I'm like almost to the middle, and I go up high again, I'm never really coming down, and I can control my depression. And if somebody starts messing with how I do that, it's not fun. You know what I mean? So like when you're on that bike and seeing like jungles and traveling and building, I'm sure you are. You're not even. You're in your creative space in real life, and I'm sure it's unexplainable, but it's probably super powerful. And then to get locked out of that, it's got to be crazy. But then you're also the type of person that has to create. So then you're like, all right, well, I'm just gonna build this thing here.
Yeah.
And then it's like it's not as good, but you want to be able to do something for the area and kind of showcase as well.
Yeah, it's like, it's creating in the end. I got to experience a different side, a different way to express my creativity through this, through COVID, because COVID pulled me from my life. This is still my life.
Yeah.
And I think for a while I was caught up in this doesn't feel like my life. Like I feel trapped. Like I feel like, but at some point it was like, no, like you're just hurting. I'm just hurting myself by being like, go back to how it was. Like that's just, you're just losing out on an opportunity to try a different version of who you are.
Yeah.
And I really feel like I've been able to try a different version of what my life is and could be, and how that is going to inform my life when I go back to my bike.
Yeah. Because it's almost like you're stuck now, like you were with the broken back, except for your back's not broken, but you're stuck again.
My foot's broken.
Yeah. But you did hurt yourself. All right, but you know what I mean? But it's like, as much as you don't want to go through that learning experience, it's going to make what's going to the next space better.
Yeah.
So like when you went through all that and then you crossed the border into Mexico, where did you start building and creating, and how did you even come up with the idea? Like where do you get permission? Who do you run into? Was it just was it planned out? Was it just something that you kind of just was like, fuck it, I'll run into other people at fucking hostels and
Yeah, I mean, honestly, some of it was like some connections online, like people who, like the biggest commission that I got, the one in Guatemala, the Temazcal that I built, that was like a commission piece that I sort of got a connection through a forum online. But the rest was mostly just, all the months I was in Mexico, I only paid for lodging for 4 nights out of like, what was it? 6-8 months? Something like that? Was it 7? I don't remember numbers very well. But like, I stayed with people. The best, this shit you just can't plan, right? It's like, I rode across the border, and the first town I went to was Chihuahua, and I was driving in. This is the desert, right? And it's like hot as hell. It's like 105 degrees, and I'm like in all my motorcycle gear, driving through this desert, and it's like, there's no goddamn breeze, even though I'm riding like 60 miles an hour. And I pull over to a gas station, and I sit down and like take off all my gear, and I like pour water on my face, and I'm just like sitting there just like, oh my God, it's so exhausting. It's like the first day I'm there, I'm like, oh, it's so hot. And I'm like not good in the heat. I have like dreadlocks. Right. It's like I'm like always wearing a winter hat.
I'm always hot.
Yeah. So
hate it.
I'm like sitting there, and and mind you, like at that time when I first crossed the border, I knew like almost no Spanish. Like
I didn't even think of that.
Right. So I was like totally in a foreign place, knew no one, didn't.
Will
really
you pull
know.
the mic just a little bit closer?
Sure.
You're fine.
I didn't really know like where I was. I knew where I was going. I was going south, right? And but so I pull over, and I'm laying there, and this couple rides up on their bikes, and at the time it was a woman and her partner, and like I didn't know at the time that Ketsi, like that's her name, she was like, I didn't see another female motorcyclist for almost the entire rest of the time that I was riding around Mexico. And Alex, her partner, they were together, and she came up to me, and she was like just just like rambling in Spanish, so excited. Like I could tell she was like talking and asking me questions, and I was like kind of trying to like talk to her. But Alex knew some English, so he was like, we were talking three ways, and she was like, blah, 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 like trying to tell me how much she like wanted to know who she was and everything. And I was like, we had this like three-way sort of conversation, and it ended up being that they were part of this motorcycle club called the Mañosos.
That's so crazy that that's what you run into your first day.
And it's literally the second hour I was in Mexico.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm like, yeah, I'll go back. That's where I was going. I was going there. And they're like, yeah, you can meet our whole club. We have like all kinds of chapters all around Mexico. Like, just come and we'll party with us. And I went there, and like as soon as I got there, it was just like partied my ass off for like a whole week. I just like hung out with all of these rad motorcyclists, and like they were telling me stories. They were connecting me with their moms and their sisters and their cousins and their aunts and all the chapters. They were sending messages to all the chapters saying, hey, this chick's coming through, you know, like hook her up, help her out. And they're connecting me with all of these motorcycle clubs. And before I knew it, like I was getting messages like, come here, come to this town, come visit us, stay with us, stay as long as you want. I got work for you. You can make art for me. You can do this fabrication thing. And I was like, fuck, like that's an entrance to my goal, you know? It was like, damn, like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. If this isn't a sign that like I did the right thing, then I don't know what was. So, and ended up working out that way. I literally stayed the entire time I was in Mexico. I paid for lodging 4 nights. And that was the only time I did that, really, was when I was really high up in the mountains and I didn't know anybody there. And I had an accident and I had to like recover. But that was the only time I bought lodging. So it was like I just lived with families and got connected with motorcycle clubs the entire way. And it was just incredible. And then all of those people connected. I got really into, I took some time away from my own work to just sort of feel how it felt to move around like I was. And within that time, I sort of was very interested in the textiles and the processes that artisans use to create their work. And so I became kind of obsessed with it and how they like weave threads. And like a lot of my work is dealing with lines and, like weaving steel together and bringing materials together. And so I got really into observing and learning about these women, particularly who make these beautiful textiles in Mexico. And I ended up connecting with the help of the motorcycle club and also going to a few artisan gatherings. I ended up connecting with a bunch of groups of artisans and staying in their communities and learning about how they did their weaving and how they made their dyes. And I ended up, living in high up in the mountains where like there is no service and nothing, and living on this person's farm and helping them with their textiles, helping them like cultivate and pick all of their corn in the field, and going to a wedding, like a very traditional wedding, and like all of these things while I was like learning about this beautiful art form there. And it was incredibly inspiring. And it was a huge part of my own like artistic exploration, was looking at other artists. I think that's very important for artists to not just be like, I'm making. It's also like, what are they making? How do they do it? Let's let that inform my work. And so while I was traveling in Mexico, it was was like a lot. I did make things for people, but there was a lot of like cultivating different ideas and different inspirations from these Mexican artists. And that was, still I think about it a lot, and ended up buying a bunch of very like beautiful textiles and bringing them back to the States and giving them as gifts and selling stuff. And it was cool. So that was a lot of Mexico. It was incredible. I just fell in love with Mexico. I will definitely be buying land in Mexico in the next decade. Like, I definitely want to build some kind of studio down there because I love it so much. But that was Mexico.
Where did you go from Mexico?
I went to Guatemala. I went south to Guatemala. and ended up building my big project there. I ended up staying there for way longer than I thought I was. But I'm incredibly slow, and it's not really about, like, I figure that map that I drew all those years ago, like, that's not really going to take me, like, my whole life, because I'm very slow. I don't really want to rush, and...
It's Kevin. He's part of the show.
So, it didn't really bother me that it took so long, I took all those years and didn't really go that far on my map, but that's not really what it's about. It's not really about like going through the map. The map doesn't even matter. The map is just an idea.
Yeah.
It's not about the route. It's just about moving and experiencing.
I mean, well, like I take things away from every guest, and and like I've already taken away that, like, I need to slow down, like, because I look at how you work, and you allow these incredible moments in time to consume this creation, but you are creating moments outside of creating your art, and that's also super important, because if you get locked into just creating art, it's very dark, and it starts getting very lonely, and then you start having internal conversations and almost making things up to feel again, because you're not getting anything out of the art because you're in it for too long. And then so, like, listening to what you were doing in Mexico, I'm like, man, like, she's on that journey, but she took time out to, like, grow with people and learn things, and it's not all about, like, the completed artwork. It's what you're bringing to the artwork to make it better. And then, like, it's very important, and what I'm learning, and just self-reflecting, and just the weird timing of us having this conversation, is that, like, it's very important to slow down. And how you said that analogy with the map is like, it is just the idea. And then, I shouldn't be rushing to get places when there's so much in between that is your real life.
Right.
But, like, that's what is freeing about it, because, like, if, it's like you don't have a 9 to 5 because you didn't want that. And then so you created this world to live in, but there's all this time in between the project and the job being finished. But, like, the experiences that you get in there are experiences that most people never get to have, because they're stuck in their 9 to 5. They're stuck in their daily routines. So why would you ignore the fact of what moments and creation you would have in that space? Because that's time and energy and things that wouldn't have existed anyways if you were in a factory. So, like, why wouldn't you spend the time and kind of slow down a little bit? And even how I'm interviewing is slowing down. Like, you're really impacting, like, how I'm going to start creating and moving forward. But it's cool listening to somebody who is so knowledgeable on, like, it's really remarkable to see how self-aware you are, and how you actually tell it back for somebody, if they're paying attention, they'll learn. But, like, that slowing down thing is huge. Like, you would have never, like, meeting people like that and having all that, like, if you were just like, nope, because there's, like, even with travel, you figure, like, somebody stops at a rest stop, and then, like, they're just there to rest, and then they're moving forward. But, like, you were there to kind of have a moment, and then it created a moment because you just needed a break, but then you ended up allowing things to move over here instead of being like, we need to get back. Like, you ever travel with somebody who's on a fucking schedule?
Oh God, I can't stand that.
So, like, I'm saying is, like, get in, get out, back on the road. We need to be there at this time. And it's like, and then, you miss life in between there.
So much. Yeah. You have to be open to changing and letting things inform what you do. And, like, just being taken by these total strangers, but I have felt good about them.
Yeah.
We had a connection, and just not being like, okay, no, but I'm supposed to be at this place at this time, so sorry, I can't come with you. I would have changed my entire life if I would have said no.
And it starts putting restraints on the whole fact of why you're free, and why, you know what I mean? Like, even like today, it's like, I don't want a time limit on this. And then I already know that I'm going to be behind. But then after talking to you, it's like, yo, that shit don't matter. Because it's people coming into your life that are wanting your time. So, like, if I'm allowing people to cut time out, and then I don't have time for myself, my life is no longer mine. And it's like, it's one of my favorite things about the podcast is like, this is my time.
Yeah.
The phone, everything's shut off. I don't know what's going on right now, and I enjoy that. This is my creative thing when I was driving and looking out the window.
Yeah.
So like, if you're too obsessed with getting to a destination and all this stuff and allowing all these times and structures, you're essentially as free as I am right now, and this is my job. It's the same thing as if I would have stayed at the post office.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're a very wise person with your with how you and just from talking to you, I can tell that it has a lot to do with the way your parents let you do things come to them, and then you make your own decision. And you know what I mean? Like that little bit you shared, which I know there's more to that, but like, what a great way to structure a child.
Oh,
and then when
totally.
you brought that stuff up about how it didn't make you insecure because they're not feeling threatened, I was like, man, like you were moving, like it allowed you to move.
Yeah.
You have awesome parents.
They are incredible. I mean, it's also not just like the supporting that they did. It's also the like letting me choose not to do something. Like sometimes, like, you know, I've heard
Train hopping was the perfect example.
but like, you know, a lot of parents are like, you know, what kids study is like, I don't know, playing basketball. And then the kid says, I don't really want to play basketball anymore. I don't like it. And the parents go, but you've put so much time into it. Like, how can you do this? We're so disappointed that you're giving this up. And that's also like they also didn't do that. You know, it was totally like, what makes you more you, Chelsea? Like, if it's stopping that, if it's starting this, we're behind you.
And what a great guideline then to have, especially with, you know, some people could take that and then they're not artistic and then they just choose to do things in life, and then life forms them with times and schedules and all that. And then they're like a responsible person who does well at their job. But like the fact that you blended that with art has really made you a very unique person. Now, where are we at in the story where you leave Mexico and now you're in
Guatemala?
So now you're in Guatemala. You were there for too long, but you did a huge art project.
Yeah.
But like, so where are we at now with the story?
Now, like today?
No, with like in Guatemala.
Oh, well, Guatemala was a whole thing because it was the big commission piece that I did.
Yeah.
It was this concrete, steel, and blown glass temescal, which is like a sweat lodge, essentially. And that was a commission by someone who lives outside of Antigua, Guatemala. And it was a very, very involved project. I worked with 3 Guatemalans to build it. It was like incredible. Talk about like a difficult thing to do. It was so difficult because, I mean, the site was in the middle of the jungle. We had to carry every single cinder block and bag of cement like very far.
Oof.
Like we used a natural spring for the water. We hand mixed all of the concrete. Like, it was so laborious and such an act of love. Like, every single bag of concrete was mixed with a shovel, like a plain old shovel. You know, there's no concrete mixer, you know. And all of it had to be put in buckets and hand poured, you know. Like, it was a labor of love like nothing I've ever made. And it also, you know, part of my project, which I guess I didn't really introduce, in Mexico, I sort of rethought what I wanted to present myself as, because I wanted to, I love writing. I really wanted to share my story and my process. And for a bunch of months in Mexico, I didn't do any sharing. I just kept it for myself. And I ended up sharing it later. But at the time, I didn't want to have to deal with like posting and writing and how these, like,
straining,
all of these things, because I just wanted to feel how it felt to do this thing that I've been planning for like 5 years, right? And so when I got to Mexico City, though, I was like, all right, I need to start sharing some of this stuff. I want to. So I made my project name UnusMundusproject, which means One World Project. It also, Carl Jung created the word Unus Mundus in terms of what it means. Carl Jung refers to Unus Mundus as the source from which synchronicity is born. That's what like the Unus Mundus is. It is the source of the universe of which synchronicity is created. And synchronicity has always been a huge part of my life. Like Unus Mundus and my sort of goal is to synchronize art, travel, and exchange. And that's why I named my project, for many reasons, I named it UnusMundusproject. But that's sort of when I like reinvented what I was going to present myself to the world as. And part of building Vaho, which is the name of the Temescal, was the exchange part. And like when I traveled through Mexico and visited those artisans, it was like an exchange of information and knowledge. And when I built Vaho, I was doing art, or building this piece of art, and I was also creating an exchange. Me and these 3 Guatemalans worked together tirelessly on building this thing, and they were like master masons, masters of concrete, and I taught them how to weld. And they came to the glass studio that I built, because I built a glass studio at Valhalla Macadamia Farm in San Miguel Dueñas outside of Antigua. So I built like a whole studio where I blew a bunch of recycled glass that I collected from the bars in Antigua. And I was able to show these Guatemalans like how it's done. And so they taught me how to work with concrete and they worked with me to build this piece. And I like taught them how to weld and taught them how to use metal and form and like make these glass panels. And it was a really beautiful exchange. And, someone said to me recently when they were at my studio, they were like listening to me talk about the exhibition that I've been building in Allentown. And they're like, I noticed that a big part of how you talk about it is who you've met through creating it. And I was like, yeah, the art and like the meeting and interacting and connecting with people is as important as making the art, and building Vaho and making those connections with those families, because I ended up meeting all of their families, and was like, there's no separating that relationship that was created than my relationship with the art itself. And building this exhibition in Allentown, like I've made a few really good friends out of it. And we've had some really amazing experiences and memories together. And no matter what, I'm going to always think about the project, including them. And that's like a big reason why I give a shit about building it at all.
Yeah.
And, and that's like, so that's one of the reasons why it was really hard this past winter, being in my studio while COVID was like running rampant, where I couldn't really see anybody. And I just sat at my welding table making work by myself with no one. And it really made me face what it is to make art with the absence of anyone but myself. And it was a very vulnerable time. I felt very insecure. I questioned and doubted everything I would make. I would throw things across the studio because I'd be so pissed off that I felt like this thing that I made wasn't representational of who I thought I was. And so I would make these things that I'm like, this is just, how can I make art that when I don't understand who I am, if I think I'm shit because I feel so disconnected from my life and my bike and this thing that I was doing, then all I'm going to do is make these things that feel alien to me. And it was many months of really like digging through that shit and finding a way to create and feel good about it. And I think that's one thing COVID has given me, is the opportunity to really face creation with nothing but myself.
Yeah.
And like, even though it is beautiful, these exchanges happen, at the end of the day, we're all alone. At the end of the day, you got to face yourself. And I can make art with a bunch of people, and I will for the rest of my life. But COVID was a sort of a challenge to create just with me. And that's a very intimate and vulnerable thing to do. And I am incredibly grateful to have really been able to face it. I feel like I'm a much more confident artist. I feel like I'm able to make more decisions that I'm proud of, and I have more direction. And I think that I wouldn't have gotten that if I was just honestly, I wouldn't have gotten it if I was traveling on my bike. I wouldn't have had the time and space to just be alone in a studio with all my tools. And I think that has changed the way I'm going to be approaching when I leave the country at the end of the year, because I want to come back for I need to still retain some of that intimate, private studio time with myself. So there's some kind of juggling that I need to do in order to create on the road with people and have exchanges, but also, fuel the part of myself as an artist that needs to be alone.
Yeah, and it's tough to especially when you connect everything that you're doing, and especially like how it started, and you had these people showing you what to do, and for a while it's hard to when you get into other people being involved in your creating, and then you kind of get lost in the fact of like you're creating with other people because you want it to feel, there's something about building something as a team as opposed to building something by yourself. And like, I really like that you pointed out that there was like a lot of like, like the alone time, and I don't like the way this is, where somebody might have picked up slack because you would have thought they were better at doing something than you, and like then you kind of like let this thing create by like kind of teetering the balance, and then when it's left to create alone, and you're the only one that's there to do it, and then the balance is on you, it becomes very vulnerable to the point where then you become unbalanced from the vulnerability. And I really like how you've already decided, and it's weird how parallel your story runs to like things that are going on, but like when you step away to start making decisions on your own, it's not fun at all, and a lot of people probably go back to just, all right, I want to be a part of the tribe. But when you're forced, and you force yourself to be in this time, and you start understanding that the emotions that you're going through are only temporary, and you have the tools to control these emotions, whether you need to sit down and be in it, or you need to go out on your bike and get away from it. But it's like when you really start moving in a fashion where you're now no longer insecure, and you're no longer feeling alone, and you can now take all these things that you learned and you can take them and be free, and you can do art, and you also are not just being narrow-minded, and you're being able to kind of like the world is now essentially your canvas, and then every decision that you make is creating. It's a really unique place to go towards, and I think a lot of people don't go towards that or don't understand that that's where they're going. But if you master that concept, I feel like you would be totally free, because you're creating in every single moment of your day, because now when you're alone, you're not looking for other people to help you build something. You can be building, and then you also know your time and space now when you need to be alone and when you need to be with others. And then now you're just a completely whole creative person, being able to move around and kind of like using your life as a paintbrush, and that to me is the ultimate freedom. And I feel like you're literally moments away from creating that, and like the amount that it probably took to get to where you're at is like extremely remarkable that you did it.
Thanks. Yeah, it's definitely been a long journey, and I don't expect that it's ever going to be over. I think I've made some great strides this year, and with all of the with all that's happened in the world, all of that's very informative. And something else happened recently that I thought that helped me think about it a little differently. I actually did like a modeling session with Julie Bell. She's this fantasy painter. She's an incredible painter. And I was talking with her and her husband. They are both very like famous painters in like, masters late in life, right? And I was talking to her about this. I was talking to her about being in the studio and feeling like what I created didn't represent who I was. And I was very insecure, and sort of moving as I moved past and sort of learning how to balance and create even with whatever is going on inside. And I was like, and I was talking to her, and she was like, yeah, it never goes away. She was like, you're just that's an artist thing. Like, you just are always going to confront your insecurities, and you're going to find new ways to like go through it. It's like a therapy, and like and she's like, sometimes I've met artists who seem like they don't have that anymore, and then their work struggles. They're not like pushing. And in a way, I felt very like consoled by it. I actually felt like, because I'm listening to it from the mouth of a woman who is incredibly successful artist. Like we were in the modeling session, and she got like 3 calls from 3 different people about commissions, and she denied all of them. Like she said no, because it's also about what you say no to, and what you're capable of doing, and what you'll allow yourself to do. And so from her mouth was like, yeah, that's how it is. It's good for you that you're going through that. It's good that you're having those emotions, that you're feeling insecure. It's good that you're moving past it, but it will come again. And it's, we're all insecure. There's always things we have to work through. Like whether we're a mechanic or an architect or an artist or a sales clerk, there's all kinds of different forms of insecurity. And artists, we just process it and try and move through it in a different way. And I think it's one thing that I feel like a lot of artists maybe give it up, because it's really taxing, to always have to put it out there and always have to like sit at your table, make stuff and critique yourself and ask why. And I think it was really nice to hear her say that. And it really helped me see in a different way, in a different light, what it is what my path forward is going to be. It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to have to face that myself like that every day. And, it's to create something physical that is you, and other people see it, and other people say, oh, I like that. I hate that. That's ugly. It's beautiful. All of those things, like, they're kind of like you're talking to you. And it's like, and we deal with that every day, whether you're making art or like getting groceries,
Food.
Or yeah, exactly.
I made a new sandwich, and my friend was trying it, and he's just like, yeah, and he started telling me the stuff he didn't like about it, and I started moving in the chair, and I'm like, yeah, like, I'm like, yeah, but that's like not how it's gonna be. Like, this is a test sandwich, and he's like, yo, dude, he's like, you need to be like, you are very emotional about this right now, and then it caught me off guard, and I was like, holy shit, like, you really give a fuck about making that sandwich. But I know I do, because when someone's like, yo, this is so good, and I'm like, yeah, but this, and this is covered on that. Because like even the guy upstairs, I was like, yo, did you eat that burger? And he's like, the moment you walked out the door. And I was like, yo, but just in case I ever give you one and you don't eat it right away, it is good if you microwave it. And I'm like, who even tells someone that about, like, you know what I mean? But it's
No,
like,
it's
it's my
exactly
work.
the same.
It's my
Exactly.
work. And then it's like, those are the moments where I look at like how far I've come with learning how to put everything into it. Like, you know what I mean? Like I'm learning how to change people's moods with creating these forms and different things and like all this different stuff where you put energy into it. And then like sometimes you don't even realize that that's what you're doing on a daily basis. And then after I do a pop-up, it's like I'm exhausted, and it's like I'm not exhausted from work. It's like I put everything I had into making that.
Put yourself out there, yeah. And that's part of, exactly. So you get it. And it's important. And then, on that note, it's like, it's okay if someone eats your burger or looks at my sculpture and hates it.
Yeah.
Like, that's as valid of a reaction than loving it.
Yeah.
And we live in a dynamic world. Everyone is living in their own realities, having their own experiences, has their own timeline. And like, you should listen to the person who says that they think that you finished that metal sculpture badly. Like you should like be okay with it. It shouldn't wreck you. Because that person may see your piece or eat your burger and not like it, but what did it do for you? Like making it. It's not about necessarily it's hard to let other people see it and judge it. But at the end of the day, it's you and it's what you want to express. And so that's, it's a whole process. I don't know what got me onto that exactly, but.
So where are you at now? Because I know you're back here, and I do want to start wrapping up, just because if I have the opportunity to bring you back on when you get to a point before you leave, or to showcase what you're building, like you're not just home.
No.
All right, now we've gone through everything, so there's no way you're just sitting at home being like, okay, I'm making some stuff on Etsy.
Yeah. No.
So like, so what are you doing now that you're here? I know you have a project, but I would like you to introduce it.
Yeah. The winter was really hard. Like I said, there's a lot of self, digging through myself, and I did end up making a really nice body of work. What survived me throwing across the studio, I did end up making a nice thing that I was proud of. And then, but I was like wanting to build something bigger because I always want to build bigger, right? And I have this workshop with my father. He's a timber framer, like I said. So he runs his own business, building custom natural homes for people. And my studio is in a little section in this workshop. And as I was in winter, going through what I went through, and then spring sort of came, and in the winter I had this idea. I was like, okay, like what can I do that's bigger than just this welding table? And attached to the studio, there's a like abandoned perlite factory. And perlite is this material that people use. It's actually obsidian glass that is thrown into a furnace and gets sort of popped like popcorn and becomes this very light, flaky white material that they use in concrete, they use in fertilizer, they use in all kinds of stuff. It's crazy how much they use. But this perlite factory, it just like, I loved it. I loved watching the snowfall on it. And I just, I love derelict buildings and decay. And like literally my studio, I stood at my studio door and I looked at this old, like abandoned rusty building that reminded me of Bethlehem Steel. And I was born in Bethlehem. I looked at the steel stacks my whole life. Like I remember when there was a blue flame that were on top of the blast furnaces. And I loved it. Like it was probably one of the reasons why I love fire and why I love metal and how I love the smell of iron. And, I was in my studio sort of depressed, wondering how I could build bigger and get over myself. And I just looked over at this, at this abandoned building. I was like, that looks like a cool exhibition space.
It's really cool.
And it's so beautiful. And so I was like, all right, I need to figure out how to do that. And so, because it's very hard if I don't have some sort of big goal. And that's kind of bad in one way. Like I should be able to function and feel good about myself if I don't have some sort of big goal in mind. But it's actually really hard for me. Like if I don't have some sort of big thing that I'm striving for. And at that point, I had no idea when I was going back to Guatemala. So it was kind of like, all right, I need a new big goal to focus on to feel like I'm myself again. And then I saw that building. I was like, all right, that's a goal. I want to build a show in there. And so I ended up writing the property owners, and they were really into it. And I was like, all right, like sign a lease. They were so generous. They just like gave me the space to use for the exhibition. And then I, got my engineers to draw up drawings because it wasn't zoned for a public exhibition. So I had to get like rezoned it, and so that I could have an exception for from the township. And so I ended up getting all my papers. It was very involved, very difficult and expensive, and ended up going to a hearing and fighting my case.
I always call that adulting.
Yeah, totally adulting. Also bureaucratic as fuck, man. Yeah. Yeah. And then this is like me coming from Guatemala where there's zoning? Like you need a permit for what?
Yeah.
Like it was just, you could build whatever the fuck you want there. But now I'm here in the US, and it's like, oh, you want to like put a door in, you need a permit. Oh, you want to like put a light there, you need a permit. You want to put a plastic sign up, you need a permit. You want to have a show.
And you got to pay us to talk to the people that you got to talk to about that sign.
Exactly. And you got to get a lawyer, and you have to, put 90 feet of ADA railing in, and you need to like do all this crazy stuff. So I ended up starting that process and got far. I got my exception. I got the architects to draw me up all of the building plans for ADA approval, and I was super tight with my engineers, and they helped me so much. And I had people sponsoring the project, and I had materials donated, and a crew of people helping me build it. And I just, this whole year until I had to suspend the show, was building that exhibition. And I invested a lot of my own money because sometimes, like, some people go to grad school, some people buy fancy cars, some people take a class. I don't know. Different people invest in their future in different ways. And if I want to build big art in abandoned places, then I'm going to I need to do that. So for me to invest some money into having the exhibition was sort of like, an investment in what I want to do with my life. I'm not going to wait around for someone to give me a big grant. And one day I'm sure that will happen and it will be very nice. But until then, I need to like do what I dream. And so I invested a bunch of money and other people invested money and we sort of were on a good track. And then I was slapped with this highway occupancy permit, which is a specific type of permit that is normally not required for a space like I have, but unfortunately it was demanded of the site. And it's a really expensive, lengthy, and complicated process of which I can't even do because I don't own the property. But basically it was a showstopper. So as soon as I found out about the reality of this highway occupancy permit, I had to suspend the show immediately because there was no way I was going to be able to get my certificate of occupancy so that I could have the exhibition unless I got this highway occupancy permit resolved. So it was delayed until next year, but I've been building, the show itself is called Delta S, which is the mathematical symbol for a measurement of disorder or a measurement of entropy. So, and entropy and decay and change over time and how things change over time and things over time, like my first project, it all has to come back. It all sort of comes back to that flag. And in terms of like what my philosophy and aesthetic is drawn from: time, space, and dimensions. And so the show has to do with all of that. It has to do with the compression and refraction and expansion of time and how that's been felt, how we feel that, especially during these years of COVID. Years. That's the first time I think I said that, referring to COVID. It's actually been years since it's happened. Crazy.
It's crazy.
But, we all felt time so differently because of COVID. We felt like a day was a year and a year was a day, and we don't know, time just disappeared, and we felt like time was so slow. And there's all of this sort of like, because time isn't linear. It's determined by gravity. It's determined by the fabric of space-time. And so like we all feel time differently. And the show is about that, both the physics related to how time and space exist and also just how the human experience is of time and change. And all the pieces in the show have something to do related to time, whether it's hourglasses that I made out of steel and glass, or whether it's the huge line work piece that represents hours of the day working within a structure, or whether it's a vibrating string that visually shows us how harmonics work. So the whole show is about that. And in November, we're going for another hearing to hopefully argue not to get the highway occupancy permit, because it's a long story. Probably shouldn't talk about it too much.
No,
but
I mean, we had talked before this, so I know you would be emotional about it, so I just kind of wanted to dip into like what your idea of the space is. And I had the opportunity to go by the space, and like it's really cool to see where you actually create, and then it's to see, because like I love the stuff that you're talking about with like the decay and the abandoned places, and I've always liked art and things like that with the rust and then the green, like the life of the plants taking over the dead occupancy of the space. And like as soon as I walked out, I don't even know if you were there, because I saw the bike and the door was open and I didn't know how to get in, and immediately just out loud I was like, yo, what a fucking rad space. And then like I wanted to take in each of it in its own, and then when you brought me inside, I was just like, yo, I'm like, the ceilings are so high, and I'm like, this place is so open, and it's so fortunate that you can even create there. And then when you walked me through your idea of how it was going to be laid out and how you were going to use sound and how you were going to use light, and the fact that somebody's in the area even doing this is awesome for just the area. But like now listening to your story and seeing what you do, and like it's really cool to hear the whole story, but then to get the extra of how when you were like, hey, you're like, you could hit these and it vibrates, and then like everything was explained where you were like, you took the art and the music, and it's that part of you is flowing through the material, and then the material are these things that you learned over time to like build. And then like it made sense to me when you were like, you know, because you were like, yeah, it takes a team to do this. But now I understand why you like building with a team, because you literally were trading trades to other people in other countries where they're probably still using the welding to build their life and everything. And it's so cool that like you were stuck in this moment of time and you wanted to express everything that you learned on your entire journey through an exhibit. Through an area that you were essentially stuck at, and then you just created something out of nothing, which is what your life work of learning to be able to just come out of a spinning rut and then just make it grow. You're one of the most incredible people that I've ever got to interview. I've been waiting to do this. We were at almost 2 hours.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, if I didn't have to pee, I would let it go another hour. It's easier when there's more people here, but I don't want to get too much into that story, and we'll let that be the next part of when I bring you on here, because like your foot's healing and like
that's unknown. I don't know.
Like I said, I don't want to. That's a very emotional thing, and I know how it is when people ask me about things coming up down the road, and when it's in the adulting stage, when there's like zoning and a lawyer that can become a very emotional road. So like, I think this is the correct time to wrap this up. Totally. I just want to thank you for being open and honest about your journey and allowing to tell the parts of it that were like, I don't know. One, you should definitely be writing a book if you're not already. And then the fact that you love writing is huge, because that story is just incredible. And I know there's more in between there. Like I said before, you know, thank you so much for even doing this for the Valley, trying to do something like this for the Valley, putting your work out there. The fact that you put it on social media, I love. I love now understanding and being able to read in my head what your at name actually is. And I'm like, oh, I've been saying that wrong. I'm like, I don't even know if I was comprehending what it was, but it was like, there's so many cool parts. You definitely have ran a parallel next to my life, and have definitely changed and adjusted things, because I'm in the middle of changing and adjusting. So like, I want to thank you for that. I want to give you a chance to let anyone know where they can follow you on social media, follow the story, where they can get a hold of you if you're doing fabrication while you're in the area, anything that has to do you that will benefit or make this easier for you while you're in the area. Please take that time to do it now.
Yeah. I mean, if you could follow me on social media, my project name is UnusMundusProject. Maybe we can put it up here.
Yeah. No, we're a legit podcast.
Or put it in the.
I will put a lower third here for you.
Excellent. Okay, down here.
If I had more time, I would put a motorcycle next to it.
Oh yes. And it would be so great if you could follow me at UnusMundusProject. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I have a website, www.UnusMundusProject.com. You can see a bunch of my work there. You can get updates on the show coming, me leaving the country, the plans I have for the future. I do a lot of writing. I share a lot of stories. And just if you want to get involved, if you want to build something with me, if you have a project idea, if you want some crazy art in your yard or whatever, you should write me, because I would love to make something awesome together.
Awesome. Thank you so much. She's easy to get a hold of. All I did was message her on Instagram, and it was really easy to communicate with you. Like I said before, thank you so much for your time. If you are a first-time listener to the show, you can get everything at neveragainstudio.com. I have everything on there, my apparel, previous podcasts, our YouTube channel you can subscribe to as well. We're working on building a team around us on the back end. Hopefully that goes well, and we can start getting out there to start doing some easier ways to do this and some bigger things coming down the road, so you guys have more content coming out of this. Subscribe to everything. It helps me, and that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me here and taking the time. It's so fun to meet you. I love talking to you. Your stories are awesome. You're inspiring, and what you're doing here is great. I'm so psyched to see it grow and continue, and I'm just honored to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm super uncomfortable with compliments.
Well, you got to take it.
Yeah, I will. I will take it in. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
That was so fucking good.
That was awesome.
Crushed that, man. At one point, I wasn't even interviewing, and I was like, this is like an Indiana Jones movie. So much fun. So much fun.
Thank you so much.
Of course. What
That
a
was so
fucking
nice.
rad story.
Never Again Radio. Get into it, brother.